What's up, everybody? We're getting started here this morning. Again, stream going a little bit early. TV and radio jumping in here in just a minute. So just jumping on and I want to tell everybody a good Saturday morning. And Brett and Luke with you this morning. And my voice sounds a little rough this morning, but three marathon days in Birmingham with the Super 7. I haven't been smoking cigarettes, I promise. It does sound like it, though, maybe a little bit. But Luke will dive into the Super 7 here, recruiting. We got a bunch to talk about this morning. And, Alabama and Auburn. I'm following Auburn the way I do and you the way you follow Alabama. I didn't really get a chance to look at Alabama's recruiting class. So I'm interested to hear what you think about your class and kind of how Alabama did. I know they did well, but just kind of a breakdown of some of the players and who you expect to come in and have an impact. You and I saw some really talented players this week in Birmingham, so we'll be talking about that as well here in a couple of minutes. So we got a fun show planned for everybody, and get your comments in, and we're getting ready to roll here in just a minute.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Certainly a lot to talk about. The Super 7, just like always, it had some incredible games, and it had some games that you wonder how one of the teams made it that far.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So, yep. So we'll be going live on TV, radio here in just about a minute. So we'll get going here. Make sure you call. You can't call with the podcast format, but you can get your comments in on YouTube and Facebook. But there were some really, really good performances up there this week. We got the Alabama Mississippi game coming up. So we might talk about that a little bit and just how recruiting's changed, man. It's just, I think we all agreed, and we'll dive into this here in a minute, Luke. We kind of all agreed. Here we go. We'll go ahead and start here in 30 seconds. All right, good Saturday morning to everybody. Welcome into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. Brett Pritchard and Luke Robinson with you. I apologize right out of the gate for sounding like a chain smoker, but I called a game last night late, and it was cold, and we're going to dive into a lot of stuff here this morning, Luke, as we were telling everybody on the stream as we got going. We're going to have a lot of talk about recruiting. Obviously, this week for Auburn and Alabama, both were good. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Alabama's recruits and how Alabama finished. We'll talk about Auburn as well, and I'll kind of give my thoughts there. Super 7 has consumed us for the last 3+ days, so we had some good games, and we had some not so good games. As Mark comes in and says, got to start it by saying go Dogs. That was one of the blowouts, Wadley destroying their opponent and getting their first state championship in school history. But going to dive into all that, Luke. Good morning, buddy.
Good morning. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. Always is. And everybody over at the Protective Stadium did a marvelous job. I thought the crowds were very nice. And it is different. I mean, you and I both love, and I think everybody loves, either Bryant-Denny Stadium or Jordan-Hare Stadium. And they have both those places have so many memories for you and I, and for everybody in this state, and anybody who's been to school there. But being quite honest, they aren't the place to play state championship games. It was cool for a bit, and then every other time I went there, like every year I went there, it got like more and more. The emptiness hit me more and more. And at Protective, yes, there's still some empty seats because the high school teams aren't going to fill up Protective Stadium. That's a pretty big place, but it wasn't quite as noticeable. And last night for for Parker and for Saraland, it was barely noticeable at all. I mean, I actually got to go down into the stands right before I left and just sort of get a feel for everything. And the Saraland crowd was hype. The Parker crowd was hype. It was just a great atmosphere. And I think it's the best place to do these state championship games.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people lobbied, saying that they would be fine with keeping the state championships every year at Protective Stadium. I agree with you 100%. I think it's the perfect size. And again, you want it to have a bigger feel because you want to feel like you've arrived at a place for a big event. So you're right. It's not going to, the fans aren't going to fill it up. You're not going to put 30,000 people in a stadium or 40,000 people, but you can put 12 to 15 in there. And I'm with you. I was on the field too. And, it had a good feeling to it on both sides. And I thought the crowds were pretty good every day for all the communities. I mean, some may have been down for a few schools, but for the most part, we saw really good attendance. The weather outside of being Arctic cold for the night games were picture perfect and clear skies. And it was a little windy Thursday, but yesterday, really not much wind. It was just temperature cold, air cold. And, I think it ended up being really good. Now, again, the HSA has not decided exactly where the games will be played moving forward. We know that Birmingham will be in the mix, but we don't know if perhaps Montgomery or, Mobile or somebody like that might jump in. But I'm with you, and I think Tommy said it. The basketball championships are there at Legacy Arena. Be a great place, and it's kind of centrally located to keep it at Protective Stadium.
I definitely think so. I hope it stays there. I think it's close enough for everybody. I mean, Mobile people probably it's a good haul, but if everything were down in Mobile, it'd be a good haul for everybody else. And so I think you just have to pick the most centrally located place that makes the most sense. And while if they did it in Crampton Bowl, I wouldn't hate it because I think Crampton Bowl has improved a ton. And I think it could even make more of a fun, intimate environment for a football game. At the same time, I just think Birmingham has so much more to offer. And I'm also speaking selfishly since I live up here and it's just so easy for me to get back. But I wouldn't mind it if it were in Crampton. I mean, I've gone to Hattiesburg, Mississippi for games, so it doesn't bother me at all where it is. But I do think this makes the most sense.
And we'll start with flag football, Luke. I mean, it's become a sanctioned sport. Again, I think it's awesome. This is the first year. I mean, they've been playing it for, I think, 3 years now. This is the first year that the winner of these games could take home a blue trophy, a blue map, and important. And, in the 1A to 5A game, Montgomery Catholic just was a straight matchup of the 5A, the 5A boys championship, Montgomery Catholic and Moody. And Montgomery Catholic wins that one too, 14-7. It was a good game, but I'll just get your thoughts on the flag football. I mean, start off with two great games, and again, the first time ever, some history made, winning a blue map trophy.
Yeah, I didn't see any of the games, and I wasn't there for y'all's call of them. But I'll say this: I love the idea of this. I know there are a lot of people probably like, "Hey, I don't want to keep inventing sports just so people can win trophies." But I think this is a bit different. I think you do have a lot of females out there, especially that are much more interested in playing football, and frankly, they can't. It's a pretty violent sport, so you adapt to that and you play this game, and I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great opportunity to learn about the sport. I can tell you right now, I got two daughters that if it were available to one who's going to Alabama next year, she definitely would have played. And if it is available to my 8-year-old when she comes up, I promise you she'll play too because she loves football. So I think it's a golden opportunity for them to win something, and it does mean something. So I'm thrilled they have done this.
Yeah, I am too. I think it's awesome. And we happen to have the best flag football team in the country. I think that's of major note here, Luke. Phoenix.
Which one is it? Who is it?
Phoenix is Phoenix City. I mean, it is.
Let me ask this, Brett, since you know a little more about it. How many regular season games do they play?
I don't know the full schedule. Some played more than others, but Phoenix City has not had a close game all year long. They won their game against Spain Park 55-7, and they have outscored their opponents like, I don't know, it's some unbelievable number, but they have the best team by far, not only in the state but in the country. And they really haven't had any close games. But again, that just shows you that the state of Alabama, when they want to try something, they want to be the best at it. And that's what they've done with these girls. And this is a growing sport. Got to remember now, everybody doesn't have a flag football team. And I think that's something that you have to look at, that there's schools that we heard while we were up there that are about to start teams, within the next year or so. And so I wouldn't be surprised. You got two classifications right now. You got 1A through 5A, and then you got 6A and 7A. I mean, this thing will continue to grow, and the more teams that get in it, the more games. And like Tommy said, you could probably see this Super 7 expanding out to something similar to what we see with the basketball championships, where maybe things start on a Monday or Tuesday, and you roll all the way into Friday, and you have a full week of football.
Yeah, I think one thing that might make it more fun is if they did the flag football in more of a tournament style in a day, because now again, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think they just do the championship games just like the boys, where if you had a whole tournament, I think that'd give more people, like, okay, if they know they're going to see more games if they come up there. Sort of like they do these 7-on-7 tournaments in the summer for boys without pads. I think it would make it a lot more fun to be able to go and say, all right, I'm going to go up to Protective, and they've got a full day of flag football. And, then you get to see multiple games, and it's not just a trip up there to see one flag football game, which can be over pretty quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, I think that would be a good format as this sport grows. I'm sure they'll look at all types of options and see what they want to do and how they want to conduct that. But, you start the way they do with a couple of years of being able to start incorporating this into the championships. And then you're able to bring in the first sanctioned year this past year or this year, and culminate with a couple of teams being able to win the first ever Blue Mountain flag football. So congratulations to Montgomery Catholic twice, girls and boys. And then you look at Phoenix City, both their boys and girls were in it, but Phoenix City's boys fell a little bit short this year. But the girls dominated Spain Park 55-7 and was able to take home that trophy. All right, Luke, we're going to go ahead and take our first break here on the show. We've got a lot coming up, so make sure you get your comments in out there on social media. Stay tuned. We're just getting started here on the Saturday Sports Countdown. All right, so Wadley dominated, man.
Yeah, that gun's pretty good. I mean, I talked to Jason Caldwell a little bit after, and I think
Jacquez Wilkes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot better at linebacker. I mean, it's really hard to tell how good he is at running back right now.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Harris asked me that yesterday on his show if I thought, those comparisons to Derrick Henry were warranted. I said, right now, yeah. I said, because most people didn't think he could play running back either. So, but he proved otherwise.
Yeah, I tell you, I'd suspect he won't be a running back.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't think so.
Better at defensive end or something like that.
Right.
Mark Knight says, got to start it by saying "Go Dogs!" Congratulations!
Right.
I guess that's what you're referencing.
Right.
So we can talk about them first. I guess they were 1A.
We're going to go 1A through 7A. We're going to go right down the line.
What you going to do today?
Try to recover.
Yeah.
You going to watch these? I guess these
championship games.
I guess. That Jackson game yesterday, though, dude.
That was bad.
I'll tell you what that was.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I told Tommy I started sending him the state championship records. I was like, I think that's the only thing that could save you, because
Yeah.
you run out of so much to say. And then, I mean, he said somebody who he was like, yeah, we need to come back and recap. He's like, I've been recapping this game for 30 minutes.
Yeah, he's recapping it since the second quarter.
I don't know how that got away from them so badly, because they didn't look like a bad team. I just think that just got so out of hand.
Cherokee County, I mean, against a team like Montgomery Catholic, your quarterback's got to be able to.
Yeah, he's got to be dynamic.
Well, he's got to be able to move around, and he just couldn't get outside the pocket. But that happened to everybody against Jackson.
Jackson's just got a bunch of dudes.
They do. Period. I mean, when you play Saraland to an 8-point game, the first game of the year. I mean,
I'll tell you what. If they played Saraland again towards the end of the year, I'd like Jackson's chances.
Ain't no doubt. I 100% agree.
Because I didn't see much out of, I didn't see as much out of Thompson or Central Phoenix that made me think, oh, they'll blow Jackson out of the water. Now they might.
Yeah, the 7A game was kind of just stale a little bit, but we got about 10 seconds.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill, Sunshine Heating and Air here on this Saturday morning. And we're glad that you joined us wherever it is that you are tuning us in. You get your comments in on social media and YouTube. We're doing the podcast style again. It's probably a good thing. As tired as Luke and I are, I'm not sure we'd have made it into the station on time this morning, but thanks to Russ back in the station for keeping us on track. And again, our TV and radio listeners, I apologize for my voice sounding a little raspy this morning. It's getting a little bit better as we get going, but 3 full days of Super 7 action, Luke, and we'll start with 1A. And like Mark said, Wadley, big win for them. First state championship in school history. They knock off Maplesville. Maplesville, a very good team, but Wadley, 37-7 over Maplesville. And Jaquez Wilkes, the junior, had over 300 yards rushing, 200 plus in the first half. This guy's one of the best in the country.
Yeah, very good, very, very good player. Now, again, I'm going to start out by tempering it, the fact that it is 1A, but I don't think that should – a lot of people just immediately discount him. I wouldn't do that at all. I think that he's going to be a fantastic linebacker or rush end on the next level. In fact, even though he came very close to setting all these state records rushing. I mean, he ended up with 38 carries, I think, which tied a state record. Ended up with 5 touchdowns, which tied a state record, and 312 yards, I think, and he was 18 yards from breaking a record, by the way, which was held by Terrence Dunlap of Maplesville. So it would have been a heck of a performance. And I wish that the coaches had given him one more carry. If they give him one more carry, I think he may break at least 2 of those records. And but I digress. I mean, hopefully he'll be back next year and he'll have an opportunity to do that. But he's pretty amazing. All that said, for the rushing, I thought he was clearly at his best on the defensive side. He was rushing. It's difficult because he's so much bigger and stronger and faster than everybody.
I don't want this to sound the wrong way, Luke, but it was like a 9th or 10th grader playing with a bunch of fifth graders.
Fifth graders, even. Yeah, you're right.
In the backyard. I mean, that's what it looked like.
I said this the other day that I remember when I was in first grade, I was a big first grader. And so people would give me the ball and it would take a few first graders to bring me down, because nobody else was as tall as I was or as big as I was at the time. And that's what it looked like. He was just carrying people on his back.
Right.
Now, having said all that, I think he's better as a defensive player. And I think that's where his bread's going to be buttered at the next level, because he was more instinctual there. I think when it comes to defense, no matter how big, strong, fast you are, if you don't have good instincts, that's going to show. And his instincts were fantastic. Yeah, and he is still bigger, stronger, and faster. Everybody on the defensive side too, but he is having to take on offensive linemen. And I thought that he did a marvelous job on that side. I think that's where his future is. I think that's where he's going to make a bunch of money eventually. And running back wise, it was such a mismatch that usually, see, he broke through, because I'll tell you something else. Wadley's offensive line is very good.
Oh, very
so he
good.
would be in the second level, and then it's him against defensive backs, and he was stiff arming defensive backs into oblivion. And the Derrick Henry comparisons came up all the time. And I remember vividly saying a lot of the same things about Derrick Henry, like when he first got to Alabama, that I think eventually he'll be a linebacker. That I tell that so people know I'm telling the truth, that made me look really stupid. But Henry is different, and Wilkes is not Henry. I don't mean that's not an insult. I mean, he's not. Henry is a freak of nature who enjoys working out, who enjoys the game. He's not out there. I don't even think Henry's out there to make money. He's good at this, so he goes and does it, but he spends most of his time working out. Wilkes hadn't even hit a weight room, it looks like. Now, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm saying I don't think he has a very good weight program. At least it doesn't look that way. He looks like he's out there in his natural state,
Sure.
which is he's just strong, like a lot of kids his age are. When he gets into a weight room, I think he's going to turn into a terror on the defensive side. Now, doesn't mean he's not a good running back right now. Right now, he's a fabulous running back. But if you told me you can have him at one of two positions at the next level and beyond,
it's linebacker.
It's linebacker, defensive end, no doubt about it. I mean, he's 6'4", 6'5", so I mean, pretty tall for a linebacker. I mean, I think he's going to end up being like an outside guy or a rush in.
Well, let me say this too. I mean, obviously he stands out on Wadley's team, and he's a big part and a major reason why Wadley was able to navigate their way through this schedule this year and win a state championship. But they are well put together for a 1A team, top to bottom, defensively, offensive line. I thought the quarterback played well. I thought he's got two complimentary guys in the backfield with him that I thought were really, really good, could have started for a lot of other teams. So when you add that together, a lot of times you see in 1A and 2A football, you got one guy, but that one guy may not be able to just do enough to get you over the hump to win a state title. But when you got a guy like Wilkes and then you add the pieces around him, the good players that Wadley had, man, shoot, it's almost impossible. And there's a reason they destroyed everybody they played. And that was a good Maplesville team. Let me just say that. That was a good Maplesville team that they beat by 30 points.
I really hate to say this because I don't have a dog in the fight. I mean, I'm calling all these games and I'm not pulling for anybody. I'm just wanting to see a good game because, frankly, a good game is much better for an announcer than a bad
for us, for sure.
But I in my head, wouldn't say this out loud, but I was thinking, boy, I hate it when anybody else gets the ball other than him because I knew how close he was to these records. And I was thinking he truly deserved it. But, alas, he didn't get it. He tied some of them, and I think he'll have another shot next year because I don't know who's going to stop him in the playoffs. I do find this interesting. I would have loved to have talked to somebody at Maplesville about this because the previous round, Maplesville played Alvin Henderson. And Maplesville wins the game 28-21.
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, how did they stop him? They cannot stop this guy. Like, there was no shot. I'm wondering how they stopped Alvin Henderson and what they would say the comparisons would be. And did they just play better against Elba? Did they just,
well, I think, Luke, it goes back, and I know we got to get to a break here for TV and radio, but I think it really boiled down to the complete makeup of the teams. I think Wadley is a much better top to bottom team than Elba. I mean, I'm no offense against Elba, but it was a snap back to Alvin Henderson. And a lot of times he had to do things on his own. He didn't have the blocking that, that Wilkes had with Wadley. He didn't have the other complementary pieces, from time to time.
My thing on that is he has had that all year, and they made it to the semifinals. Wadley threw 2 passes in this game.
Yeah,
and you knew what was coming. So I just
Elba's won a lot of close games,
I just find it remarkable. And how did they hold Elba to 21? I mean, if they had won, if Mablesville had won 49-48, okay, I get it.
Right.
But how did they hold them to 20? I mean, it's just one of those things that I wish that I had somebody from Mablesville say, tell me what happened here, because I don't see how it went from this to that.
Well, I really think, it comes down to Wadley is that much better than everybody in 1A. I really do. I think Wadley would have destroyed Elba. I mean, I think you would have gone out there and seen Alvin Henderson do his thing. But at the end of the day, this Wadley team was by far the best team in 1A, and it wasn't close. And they showed it in the championship game. So, all right, let's get to our break here for TV and radio. Stay tuned. A lot more to come right after this. But I really think, it's one of those things that that's how much better. I mean, I looked at their line. I looked at their other running backs. I mean, they had other pieces. That's kind of what my point was, is that I don't want – Wilkes is obviously the major reason they won, but I don't want it to all go to him.
No, I agree with that. But I'll say this: if Wilkes isn't on that team, I don't think they win.
Oh, without a doubt, or at least they're in some real close football games and they're having to do some different stuff. But when you got a guy like him, you just turn around, hand the ball to him, and he's dragging people 5-6 yards down the field. I mean, if you don't turn the ball over and the other team just doesn't create some type of turnover from time to time, and there's really no way to stop that.
Yeah. He's an interesting player.
Yeah, Justin, we're going to get to all these comments, guys. Justin said, do you think any bigger schools will go after any of the Jackson athletes? He's referring to high schools, not
I know what he means.
College. So is NIL legal for high school players? I mean,
it is in some states.
Well, and this is a sticky wicket for Alabama. There is no rule against NIL in Alabama. But what you can't do is go around in your high school garb and represent a business with that high school on your shirt or hat or something like that. So there really is no rule for NIL.
I mean, I don't know what you do to fix this.
I'm just so exhausted from it. I mean, my whole feeling on this is the way I sound this morning, worn out and tired. I mean, seriously, I just, that's all recruiting is now. That's all you talk about. All you talk about is everybody begging for money. And we've heard so many stories, Luke. We'll get to those here later on in the show. I'm telling you, it's not about going to the college. And we all know that there were nefarious things going on, but everybody was doing the under table stuff. And now that everybody wanted this, now everybody's sick of it.
Well, you still had to go to class. You still had to do your thing. And I'm sure you still do now, but I couldn't.
When was the last time you heard about somebody being academically ineligible?
Yeah, Jason Caldwell said that last night. I mean, and again, I'm not here to stop anybody from making a living.
That ain't got nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I'm here to say I think college football holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts for a reason. And now it does go to, we're just cheering for laundry. It used to be we did cheer for the school and we cheered for whatever. But I mean, I know Auburn people love to say we love Auburn, don't love the football team. But I mean, now it's rent a player for everybody. And
right.
It
back.
Takes away.
We're back on TV and radio, by the way, we come in. But keep going. I mean,
no, it takes away. I mean, and again, I don't know even how to put it into words. And I think some people are upset. And when they say they're upset, it comes out like, oh, we don't want kids making money. I don't think that's what people are saying. I don't care.
That is not what we say.
Ryan Williams does deserve some money. I mean, Jarquez Hunter does deserve some money. 100%. I mean, they help make money for these universities. And they help create value for these universities. So I think we all get that. But we've sold our souls now on the lowest levels. I mean, how much lower can this go? I mean, are we going to start doing NILs for seventh graders, for fifth graders? And I mean, look, I'll tell you what, this is not a joke. I mean, my daughter's playing a basketball game today at 9:00, and she's going to play. My daughter's probably the second best player in the league. I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. She's just very good. And then we played the first best player in the league today, I believe. And this girl can put up 20 on you in an 8-year-old league, 25. She's incredible. If there were NIL for second graders, she'd get it. And but there's part of me that goes, I don't know that that's where we want to be. There's no doubt in my mind that eventually, it's sort of like the entertainment world, Brett. We've always treated the entertainment world over in its own stratosphere. But how many times do you see these kids that are child entertainers, and then by the time they're 17, there's something extremely wrong with them? They've been through depression or drug problems.
Hey, what about this baby Gronk kid? I mean, do you see this stuff on social media with this kid?
It's nuts.
I mean, it's so. It's disgusting. I mean, I'm not talking about the kid, but what the parents and everybody's allowing to happen. I mean, this is nothing but, self gratification, self promotion. I wouldn't touch that kid to my program with a 10-foot pole. Mm-mm. I mean, I don't want something like that, like a sideshow around that guy. And I mean, look, you don't know what kind of player he's going to be when he gets up older. I mean, he's been a lot bigger, right now than, the kids around him, maybe. But look,
I told you when I was in first grade, I was bigger than everybody.
Right.
People caught up. So obviously that my short-lived first grade 3-month running back career in the playground ended quickly.
You were Derrick Henry for 3 months.
I was a fatter white Derrick Henry for about 15 minutes.
Well, I mean, I think what we're saying here is that's where our minds already go, even when we're watching Little League games. We're watching this one particular kid in a girls' basketball game, and you're like, man, good Lord, if everything is about money and trying to get somebody to come to your school when you're in high school based on what type of deal you can get. And I talked to Alabama and Auburn fans and everybody else fans this week, and they're just disgusted. They're so tired of just it's ruined the sport, Luke. It's ruining it. It's in the process of ruining it. It's not completely ruined now, but if they don't get, and when I say they, I don't know who they is anymore. I don't know if it's NCAA or what, but if they don't get a grip on this, it's going to be gone, and it's not the sport that we love so much.
Yeah, and ruining it. I think you're right, except just ruining it in the way that we fell in love with it and the thing that made it magical. The NFL is all about this, all about the mighty dollar, and
because they're professionals. They're professionals.
Number one, you're right; it's professionals. And number two, it's sort of always been that way. Now it sort of has. Now they went through all these kind of work issues and players' rights and everything else. So, but that is all about the dollar, and we get it. College football, you hear all the stories about so-and-so grew up just dreaming of running through the tunnel at Bryant-Denny or Jordan Hare.
I talked to Wesley Britt yesterday about it for a long time.
Yeah.
He feels the same way, Luke. He said it meant something to wear that jersey, and it still means something to him. He said, man, I don't think a lot of these kids for either side care anymore. He said he was on the field for the Iron Bowl, and he said both Auburn and Alabama players, he said they look like mercenaries to him. It just one of those deals where he just didn't see the passion in their eyes that they had when they played.
Well, and here's another thing, again, with expanded playoffs, I'm sure we're getting this second segment, but this is the one thing I kept talking about. There are people who are saying that, hey, the regular season wasn't affected because it was actually better because of expanded playoffs. And in a way, they're right. In their own way, they're right. But in another way that we've always loved college football, the fact that some teams like an Alabama, like Ole Miss, like South Carolina, like even a Miami, like a Tennessee, are even involved in the playoff mix is different than what we've ever known. And we used to accept, okay, if you're not like elite, you don't get to go. Well, now it's like, you can be okay and you can get to go to the playoffs. And don't tell me that's just Alabama's fault. That's also Tennessee lost to Arkansas and they lost to Georgia in a pretty big way.
And you got Ole Miss trying to beg to get in after they lost at home to Kentucky.
Yeah, Ole Miss lost to a one win in the SEC Kentucky team that got blown out by Louisville.
And
Clemson will get in if they win tonight with 3 losses, and none of their wins mean a hill of beans. So, yeah, this has been devalued. Now, some people say that I'm actually wrong about that. They think because every game means more, you have a shot at the playoffs. Again, it's just the way you look at this. Glenn Tuller says Army should be in. No, they shouldn't. No, they shouldn't. I mean, they just shouldn't. I'm sorry. I like Army. I'm pro Army. I'm pro everything. They played one team this year. Notre Dame waxed them, and Notre Dame's not that good either. So they had an opportunity to prove themselves, and they didn't. And I'm all for Army being out. Doesn't mean I don't love the Army.
We'll go ahead and take our break here on TV and radio, but I think a lot of this, we got a lot of comments coming in, but it's all spot on. I think the way we are doing things, and Glenn said something about the money causing all the on the field drama. We talked about that at length this past week with all the fights and all the things that are going on in the social media world, trying to upstage each the other team and players, things that we've seen that we have never seen in games like the Iron Bowl that we saw this past Saturday. That frankly, there is a reason all of this is going down. It's because you're throwing all this money and all this fame in each other's face, and there's no respect. There's no mutual respect for the other side anymore. It's about, let me see how much I can gloat and rub it in your face. So let's go ahead and get to our next break. We come back, a lot more to come here on the Saturday Sports Countdown. All right, Luke, I'll be right back. Hold on one second.
Okay. Everybody watching the championship games today? They should be some pretty good ones. I mean, the only one I'm really looking forward to SMU and Clemson because I'll be an SMU fool. But I think Oregon, Penn State has some intrigue. I think the biggest question is which Oregon team will show up. If the good Oregon team shows up, I don't think Penn State has a shot. And then I wonder, why is Penn State in this? Why do they get a pass? They ain't beaten anybody, ain't done anything. Justin Clayton says, are you going to South Bend, Luke? I'll tell you something. If Alabama goes to play South Bend in a playoff game, I don't know that I can't go. I think I'd have to figure out a way to go. It wouldn't be easy. I wouldn't necessarily enjoy it because it is going to be cold as rip. But, I've had the mantra that as long as Alabama's in this run, I need to go enjoy it as often as I can, just like I went to the Final Four last year. Now, that was more happenstance than anything, but I'm going to go. When my team's doing well right now, and I'm a little older, and my kids, for the most part, are older, then, yeah, I'm going to go do some stuff. And if my kids want to go with me, they can. If I'll go by my dang self, I'll go by my dang self.
Yeah, John's giving me all types of remedies. I apologize, guys, again. Mucinex, got a little Goldschlager mixed with lemon and Michigan, Texas, Oregon have a huge advantage right now. Do y'all see a salary cap coming down the road? Will it change anything? I mean, you got to.
So what if you do have a salary cap? How's that change the NIL? Doesn't change the NIL.
Well, because NIL is not really NIL.
Well, but I'm saying it will do nothing in terms of paying somebody, an advertiser paying somebody, it's not going to stop Oregon. It's not going to stop Nike from paying Naheem Offer to whoever they want to, if they want him to advertise for them, and they can give him whatever they want.
Right.
That salary cap's not going to change that in the league. So I don't know how you put your arms around this. I don't think you do. Same way that if you're a free agent and you can go to New York or you can go to Jacksonville, and in New York they say, okay, our salary is competitive with Jacksonville, but you're in New York and your face is going to be in Times Square.
Right.
All of a sudden you're going to New York.
You're right. Well, we got about 30 seconds. We'll be back for TV and radio again. Going through the Super 7 and gonna dive into all this college semi-pro, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, welcome back everyone to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. Brett and Luke here with you till 9 o'clock. Again, we got a lot of comments coming in and a lot of takes on this college football situation. We'll talk recruiting. We want to go through and finish up with the Super 7 here in hour number 1. A team right down the road from us, Luke, in the Reeltown Rebels dominated Tuscaloosa Academy. Again, we saw another great performance by Reeltown. This is 2 years in a row they've made it to a championship game. This time they get over the top and win 49-13 over Tuscaloosa Academy. And they've got one of the better players in the country, too, in baseball. And again, at quarterback. And he made some outstanding throws in this game. And but I think they missed it maybe. In the MVP, I'll let you talk about that. You had that game.
Catavius, help me, Brett. Is it
number 12?
Morgan?
No, no, it's not.
I look, folks, y'all bear with me. When you call this many names, they begin to run together a little bit. Regardless, number 12 for Reeltown. I do remember that.
Hood. Is it Hood? Hood?
No, it's not Hood. It starts with an M. I'm almost positive. But regardless,
well, I'll get it here in just a second.
Yeah, just look it up while I'm talking. But he had 2 interceptions. He caused a fumble. He recovered a fumble. He had a receiving touchdown. He had a rushing touchdown. He also had some return yardage, I think. He had one of the more incredible all-around not Catavius Caldwell Pope. It may be Caldwell, but I don't think it is. Regardless, he was incredible, and I thought he should have won the MVP. Now, their quarterback did some phenomenal things too, and he is an unbelievable athlete. That being said, I just thought number 12 for Reeltown deserved.
Catavius Martin.
Catavius Martin. I knew it was
Catavius Martin. Yep. Yeah.
So Catavius Martin, and I apologize if anybody for Catavius is listening, but again, these names begin to run together when you do a lot of these. And
Jamarcus Smith is the
and he is a remarkable athlete.
Yeah,
remarkable.
He's the number 1 baseball prospect in the country as a sophomore.
Yeah, but he may be, and that's wonderful, and I'm happy for him. But I feel like Catavius Martin won that MVP in my opinion. But regardless, it's a huge feather in the cap for the town of Reeltown, and super happy for them, especially being a little more local to us.
Chad said the first NIL regulation should be if any player receives NIL money in 1 year that exceeds the annual tuition cost, they cannot claim a scholarship for the university. Hey, you know what? I don't have a problem with that. And I know they don't really care either. I mean, for some of those, like for some people, Luke, the scholarship's still a big deal. For them to get a scholarship to go to college and get their education because they're probably not going to go to play professionally, that's still a big deal for them. But for some of these kids, and I'm not going to single one out, so I'm not even going to bring up a name. But we all know the one here in the state this year that's garnered most of the attention. And if he wants to go off in a scholarship for that kid after what he's probably gotten in an NIL deal, doesn't mean squat to him. You know, in the past it would have because he wouldn't have gotten all this other stuff. But now he's going to get way more than, you know, maybe an offensive lineman or somebody down the line on your roster that you've got to have, and then where that scholarship still means something.
I'm not against it, but I do want to play devil's advocate. I'm going to read verbatim what he says. The first NIL regulation should be, if any player receives NIL money in 1 year that exceeds the annual tuition cost, they cannot claim a scholarship from the university. Okay, so if the scholarship, I mean, their scholarship's probably worth, I mean, let's call it $100,000. So if they make $101,000, they can't claim a scholarship. And what they'll say is, what? I just lost $100,000. You know, I think maybe when you get up to a certain number, that's not all for. Maybe we just say from the jump, you have to pay your way. But we all know that's not going to happen.
Well, it's no different. Look, there's always going to be a line, and you said this, and I've said it. When you had 2 teams in the playoffs, we wanted 4. When we had 4, we wanted 8. When but we went from 4 to 12, and everybody said, well, nobody will be lobbying to get in if there's 12 because it'll be clear. Well, guess what? You got Alabama, you got Ole Miss, you got all these teams lobbying to get in. So, well, it don't matter if you're at 24. You're going to have somebody at 25 and 26 lobbying their case to get in. So, look, I mean, I kind of see the principle of what Chad's saying here. Like, I see what you're saying too. I mean, if you're $1,000 over the deal, then that wipes out the NIL that you did. Plus, you still got to pay for your school. So you kind of look. There's always going to be a line somewhere where somebody says I got screwed, And I had an Alabama buddy of mine last night, Luke, that was in the box with us. And this is exactly what he said about Alabama lobbying to get in. And he's an old school Alabama fan. He's like, what are we doing, man? He's like, why are we lobbying to get in at number 12? He said, in my mind, if I can't be in the top 5, I don't care about the playoffs. And I know that's just somebody as a fan saying that, but look, there's some people that feel that way, man.
I understand I understand that people feel that way. I respect that he feels that way. And that's what I was trying to say back when I said I don't want to expand it. So everybody's late to the ball game now. We've already done it. So we are going to have 12. So if you don't lobby, you're stupid. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Now you can stand on this moral high ground all you want to. That's fine. But while you're not lobbying, Lane Kiffin is going to be lobbying. Shane Beamer is going to be lobbying. Mario Cristobal is going to be lobbying. Shoot, the coach at BYU should be lobbying. And why BYU is getting snubbed in all this and Miami's getting a pass from some people like Danny Cannell is beyond me. Because, frankly, it's just what I said. Everybody thinks that this expansion has made the season so much better. No, it's made it so much more drama-filled, which I enjoy. I'm not going to lie. But it's not the best way to crown a champion of your sport. And I get tired of Danny Cannell talking about how
you pay way too much attention to Danny Cannell.
You know why? You know why, Brett? Because I drive from Birmingham to Lake City every morning. He's on in the morning. And I listen to the college channel because they do talk nothing but college football, which I appreciate. And Danny Cannell says we should just go to the NFL model where your record gets you in, and sometimes there are bad divisions. Bad divisions. And but those divisions only have 4 teams, and there are only 32 teams in the NFL. And you might have a tiny bit of an easier record than somebody else, but for the most part, everybody's record's pretty equal. In college football, you've got 133 teams, and on the West Coast, they don't care about football as much as we do. And so our teams are better. The SEC is better. Have you looked at the recruiting rankings? Everybody went to Big Ten SEC schools. So you're telling me, and I'm not yelling at you, but I'm just saying you're telling me that the Big 12 and the ACC cranks out the same kind of teams that we do when our recruiting rankings are through the roof, our NFL projections are through the roof, and then everybody goes, well, those don't really mean you have the best team. No, they don't, but they mean you probably have the best team. And when you do it on an average for all these other teams, you definitely have the best conferences.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with that at all. I think you're exactly right. Still doesn't mean that we're not disgusted with the way it's all going. And it kind of leads into what Glenn says. The NCAA can't figure out a way to make money off the deal, so they're just going to let it destroy college football. And then John comes in and says, ding, 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 Glenn, you got it right. I think you may be spot on. They've done this from day one. The approach, if I'm going to take my ball and go home, I'm pissed off that, we don't really have any power to control. And all we did for the first 15 years of our program, Luke, is talk about how the NCAA didn't have control, and they there was no rhyme or reason for why they punished teams and why they did what they did. And now that they've had it all stripped away by, Congress and everything else, they're just a lame duck organization.
Well,
They are.
and that's right. And here's something else. Boy, I never thought I'd be in this posture. I'm on Cam Newton's side on this. I don't know if you saw him yesterday, but he went off a rant and said, because everybody was expecting him to say, well, aren't you kind of for the little dog, the spunky little so-and-so who's, shouldn't we all be for UNLV to still get in, and Boise State and SMU and blah, 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 even though SMU ain't going to be a little dog for a while. But
right.
He was like, nobody wants to watch Boise State play Notre Dame in December. Nobody. Now, we can pretend that we all do, or some of y'all out there can pretend you do.
Hey, let's just go ahead and get the break real quick for TV and radio, and we'll just keep this going through the off break. Stay tuned. More to come right after this. No, you're right. Look, you've been saying that forever. And look, my only point in the NCAA tournament is it's fun for an upset or two in the first round or two, but by the time you get down to the Sweet 16, it's kind of like you want your cake and eat it too deal. You like some upsets, but when you get down to the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, if you got a bunch of daggum George Masons and Florida.
What was the one in Chicago, Illinois?
Loyola. When you got all those in Florida, Gulf Coast and stuff like that, everybody's like, they're like, I don't want to watch that.
And I don't want to see. And again, it's fun on the surface. Like, oh, UConn was upset by George Mason. Oh, wait a minute. We got to watch George Mason in the Final Four now. Give me a Final Four all day with, I don't know, Kentucky, Duke, Texas, and or maybe Texas is a bad example, but some other UConn. Right. I'm trying to think of somebody else who's not Alabama or Auburn that's in the top 5 right now. Help me.
You talking
Michigan
about
State?
Michigan
State. Give me that. I tell you, I go back to the first Final Four I ever went to in '92. Duke with Hurley and Leitner and Grant Hill and coached by Coach K. I got to see Cincinnati with Huggins. We coming back?
No, you got time.
Indiana with Bobby Knight and the Michigan with the Fab Five. Yeah, that's a Final Four. When you put Loyola Chicago in the Final Four, I don't. Right. God bless Sister Jean, and I appreciate her work. I don't care about who she pulls for in basketball.
Yeah, true, no doubt. We'll get to these recruiting rankings and stuff. Look, we all know. Really, when you look at the Big Ten and the SEC, it just shows you where all the money is, and it just shows you where the priority is. And
Cam said this too, John Denton. He said nobody wants to see another TCU. He said we tried this y'all's way. TCU got their doors blown off. Now, it doesn't mean other good teams won't get their doors blown off, but at least when other teams get their doors blown off, is somebody like Clemson beat Alabama's brains in. But at least we're like, well, we know Tua Tagovailoa and Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and Devontae Smith. I can't name anybody from that TCU team because that game was unwatchable, and all their games were unwatchable.
Yeah, that was
and I love college football.
But that was a joke. It was a joke.
And everybody wants to think that all these everybody keeps telling me the playing field's leveled. It's not. It's leveled for some teams.
Right.
The stinky teams are going to be even stinkier than they were before. ULM, whose running back came in and did some good things against Auburn, and guess what? Ahmad Harvey, he's in the transfer portal.
Absolutely.
Because soon as you get good at a small school, you need to get your butt on out of there.
Well, that's exactly right.
Genty's going to be the exception, not the rule.
Absolutely. All right, we got 10 seconds here. And then we'll be back. Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. I want to thank them both for being longtime partners here on the program. Lots of comments coming in. John said, who is Danny Smell. He said, Brett's right, Luke. He's a nothing burger.
But he's a nothing burger that I have to listen to every morning. Otherwise, I get to listen to the 80s, which I like the 80s, but I like college football too.
Much rather listen to the 80s rather than some idiot talk about.
Yeah, but his partner, Dusty Dvorak, does put him in check sometimes, which I appreciate. So I like to hear that.
He has to put him in check. His name's Dvorak. I mean, he has no choice but to do that. So, all right, let's finish up the high school championships. Mars Hill knocked off Houston Academy. That was a close game. That was a really good game, 50-43. We saw Jimmy Rain on the sideline. Luke, his grandson, plays offensive line for Houston Academy. That was a great football game. A lot of offense in that game, came down to the end, and but Mars Hill, just a very, very good team from Florence. Not much to talk about with Jackson. 69-6. Duckworth, the quarterback, the duo at wide receiver, the defense.
And then Kroll at running back, who's the best running back as a sophomore in the country. I mean, nobody's stopping them.
No, nobody's stopping them at all. That Jackson team was just so dominant. And Cherokee County was 13-1 coming into that game, and they had a great season. And when you get to a state championship game and you give up 69 points and can only score 6, look, Jackson had already proven, and we heard it by a lot of people in the press box. I don't know that any team, even in 7A, would want to line up against Jackson down the stretch at the end of the season. I mean,
Jackson
just that
used
good.
to be an 8A.
It looked like they were making a case for 8A. Montgomery Catholic in the 5A championship with a 3-point win over Moody. Man, 2 great football teams, really good football teams. Jake Gaines has created something in Moody they've never had, and that's a really good program, an expectation that they're going to be one of the top programs in the state, and they played tough teams all year. I mean, they opened up with Gainesville, Georgia, with Josh Niblett. They played Oxford, who was one of the best teams in 6A, so they didn't shy away from competition all year. And, the quarterback who was signed with Georgia Southern had an injury with his finger, and he played through it, but just wasn't as crisp with his passing probably as he would have liked to have been, obviously with a finger injury. And, that's part of it. I said it on one of the broadcasts. It's been a long, grueling season for all these teams at this point, and everybody's banged up. And do you have key guys banged up to where they can't perform at their highest level? And some of these teams did, and it may have cost them. But again, Montgomery Catholic jumped out to 14-0 lead. Moody fought back and tied the game, and then Catholic was able to make a couple plays to get down and kick a field goal and win the game. So great football game, back-to-back champs for Montgomery Catholic.
Yep, big deal. They're just a super talented program, and they got their act together, and they're going to be good for a while.
Saw this one last night. Randy and I had this game, Parker and Saraland. Saraland comes up short for the second straight year. Parker, just too much. I thought Saraland missed their opportunity in the third quarter. They had all the momentum. Parker had kind of gone into a shell offensively. They played on Parker's side of the field in the entire third quarter, and Saraland only managed a field goal. And when you can't get more than that against a team like Parker, it's probably not going to end well for you. And Parker was able to put together one more drive to put that game away and win 28-17. But
yeah, it was like 4th and 9. And
right.
Timothy Merritt, who spurned to Miami at the last minute and signed with Tennessee, he's able to maneuver his way through. I mean, Parker was just – they've got the big dudes up front, and they got the special guys at skill positions to make good things happen. I mean, they have a great combination.
I don't know that I've ever seen a performance like Jordan Crawford last night. I mean, he was the MVP. The guy, I mean, just for his size, I was blown away with how athletic and fast he was. I mean, that kid weighs 300 pounds, 305 probably. They had him listed at 285. He sprinted by that a long time ago. But he was just he benches 400 pounds. He squats 600. But the agility of him out in open field against a guy like KJ Lacey or some of these skill guys to be able to make open field tackles was eye-opening for all of us. We talked about it last night, and so many people came up to us during halftime and said, "Man, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it." So, man, huge performance by him. Just deserved it, because a team like Saraland that averages 40-something points a game and you hold them to 17 probably needs to be a defensive MVP.
Yeah, I thought he should have been the MVP. I mean, you couldn't give it to somebody like Alford. Alford was beaten for 2 touchdowns. I mean, now one of them was just an unbelievable play by the receiver.
But he did get beat.
But he did get beat twice. Now, that being said, I mean, you could still see his talent was just
he's unbelievable,
shining. He's good. I thought that KJ Lacey looked pretty good. I mean, imagine this Saraland team with Ryan Williams still on it. This is probably a different game. But that being said, I thought that Crawford looked good. I thought the whole defensive line for Parker looked really good. I thought
that was the difference.
Yeah,
that was the difference in the game.
Like, if Crawford doesn't get you, somebody else is getting you. I mean, like, somebody always busted through, like, time and time and time again. Like, there was nobody to double team, because you're like, if I double team somebody's gonna bust through, and so it was a problem for.
It definitely was. All right, let's go ahead and get to our top of the hour break here for TV and radio, and then we'll come back and we'll be in hour number 2. So everybody stay tuned. More to come on the Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
What does "put on that shoe" mean?
I don't know. Put that on a shoe.
Put that on a shoe. Oh, like Alford. Like.
I mean, that's what we're talking about, man.
Okay.
Daggum shoe deal for a kid that ain't even played in college. Michael Jordan called and said, "Let me get an offer."
That's just crazy, man.
Yeah, it is. It's sad, man. I mean, I say it's not sad that the kids can't. I mean, the kids, look, they're playing the game. I tip the hat. If I were their age and had their talent, I would take advantage of it too. But it's the fact that adults and organizations can't regulate this sport. I mean, the fact that we're sitting off to the side saying, "Well, I don't know what to do." Is everybody that stupid? I mean, seriously. Is that what we're saying? Is that, we can figure out ways to go to the to make a rocket land in 2 arms like Elon Musk after it's gone up into space and come back and sit right back down on a target, but we can't figure out a way to administer and regulate college football. That's the dumbest crap I've ever heard. It's like Glenn said. It's like the NCAA is pissed off and decided that, hey, we're just going to let y'all watch it fall apart, and then y'all come see us.
Justin says, where are the offensive linemen in high school? I mean, that's a good question. I mean, there's Mika DeBose and Mal Waldrop that signed with Bama. I don't think Auburn signed an offensive lineman from the state.
Where did Card Smith end up going? He ended up not going.
No. He was committed to USC. I think he flipped to somewhere else. So
Carday Smith or something like that, yeah.
I'll find out. But those are only 3 I can even think of from the state. And, Waldrop, high 3-star. Mika DeBose started out a 5-star. He's down into mid 4-star. I mean, and Smith was a 4-star too. But other than that, I can't think of any other offensive lineman that really stood out. I mean,
John wants to know where Seaborn might be going.
Yeah, he can go just about anywhere, but you do wonder, like, when you're that much far ahead of everybody. Oh, yeah, he did go to Colorado. Corey LeBounty said Colorado. Yep. I remember he went flipped to somebody.
Yeah, we were talking about it last night in the booth. Corey, we were talking about it, and Corey did mention Colorado. I forgot.
Yeah, that's I forget what we were talking about before that.
And a lot of this is parents. I mean, you and I talked about this. These kids may have decided to go somewhere, and the dad's coming in and said, "No, you're not going there. We're going over here. We are going over here."
Well, it is funny though. I mean, for all the heck that people give Deion Sanders, and I've given him some too, and sometimes it does look like a clown show. There may be a method to the madness. 2 offensive linemen from Colorado made the 24/7.
5 seconds. Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. Hour number 2. Continue on, Luke.
Yeah, we're talking about, I think it's Carday Smith.
Carday Smith, yep.
He was committed to Auburn, flipped to USC, and now he's flipped to Colorado, and that's where he ultimately signed. And again, we talk about Deion Sanders, and some people think it's a clown show over there, and I think there have been signs that those people may be correct. That being said, they only lost 3 games this year. Travis Hunter could win the Heisman. Shedeur Sanders may be the number 1 pick in the draft. I'm not sure I agree with it. I probably wouldn't do it, but it may happen. Then 2 of their offensive linemen, I can't remember the other one's name, but Jordan Seaton, who is the number 1 offensive lineman in the country last year, he signed with Colorado, and they had 2 of them that made the 24/7 all-freshman team. So, I mean, not bad. I mean, if you're going to kill Deion Sanders when things go wrong, you ought to at least give him a little love when things go right.
Yeah, look, you can't argue with what he's done. He took over a dump, and now they have all the eyeballs on them, and you may not agree. Hey, but with some of the things that they do, but you know what? There's probably a lot of people that don't agree with a lot of things other schools are doing. So he's doing it his way. He's doing it in a unique way that's drawing attention to Colorado. And yes, Shedeur Sanders is a main reason why they are doing what they're doing. Obviously, and Travis Hunter is 2 of the best players in college football. And you may argue that somebody else is better, but Travis Hunter probably deserves the Heisman Trophy. I mean, he's the best 2-way player I think I've ever seen. And, he started at Jackson State. He was the top recruit. Look, it's very rare a lot of times you see the top player in a class actually live up to billing. And he has, Luke. Everybody was in shock that Travis Hunter chose Jackson State coming out of college. He was a high 5-star, number 1 player in the country by, some recruiting services. And here he is a few years later, probably the leader for the Heisman Trophy. So it's panned out for him. Wesley said, I thought Moody got screwed on that one call. Inadvertent whistle, had all the momentum until that call. I mean, it's part of the game. It's terrible that happened. I thought the game had been well officiated to that point, and you hate to see a call like that come into play, but man, it happens. Again, they tell referees, don't put that whistle in your mouth. And he thought that the play was dead, and it had not. It was not. The ball popped out. Moody actually recovered the fumble. But, the other way around, if Montgomery Catholic had recovered the fumble, everybody wouldn't be saying that. They'd be saying, well, Montgomery Catholic got screwed because they caused the fumble and they recovered it and ended the drive. But, hey, Moody had to get a yard, okay? They didn't get it the first time, and they didn't get it the second time. So they decided to go for it, and they did have the momentum, and I think it boils down to that. Now, again, the call did have an impact on the game, and it allowed Montgomery Catholic to come down and score 1 field goal to be the difference in the game. But if Moody gets that first down, I think they drive on down, score, maybe win the game.
Yeah, and I saw some other people talking about it on a message board. I think it was Jason Caldwell that responded. For all the heck that we've been given college officials these many years, and is getting more and more deserved. College officials have gotten to be pretty terrible, at least at the SEC level. I said it again. You want to talk about judgment calls and holding and pass interference or whatever. Okay, those we can all, I think, forgive. But when it comes to something anyway, I'll get into that later. But the high school officials, they don't make a ton of money. And Jason Caldwell actually fired back a little bit, said, hey, they're looking for officials to come over here and make this little bit of money to come do this. So if he's
right. He's right.
Butts, and I'm with him. I'm 100%.
Did you hear Pete's story in the booth last night, Luke, with us? The state is down. There's a shortage of officials in this state of close to 600. I want you to think about that. That this state could use 600 more officials. I mean, you got crews doing double time during the week, a Thursday night game and then a Friday night game. I mean, you're right. Nobody wants to do this job, and it's a problem. And without officials, we don't have a game. So that's another thing that needs to be figured out. And again, it's all about money, right? And Pete said some of these young people coming in, yeah, you don't make a lot of money in high school. You do it. Do we do anything anymore for the love of doing it? I mean, I understand. I want to get paid too, right? You and I don't get up on a Saturday morning to do this for free. I mean, we love to interact with our everybody that comes on here and watches, and we provide a product. We do our research and we try to do the best we can, and we get paid some. We don't get all this massive money, but we don't get up just for craps and giggles to do it for nothing. And at the end of the day, I understand people want to get paid for their time. Your time's worth something. But if you go into being a high school official thinking you're going to make some monster amount of money, then you're going into it for the wrong reason. Mm-hmm. And now you just got a bunch of people that say, well, I just ain't going to do it if you don't pay me what I'm asking. I mean, you can't pay everybody top dollar. I mean, we've talked about the SEC. The SEC officials probably need to get paid a lot more than they get paid because there's billions of dollars involved in college sports. So why are you going to pay the people that regulate and administer the game the amount they get paid when all these?
Well, I ain't giving them a raise till they start doing better.
Well, if you make it a full-time job, Luke, maybe you can hold them more accountable. Maybe you have some. I mean, but right now you got a school superintendent during the week that moonlights as an SEC official on Saturday. I mean, what else can you say about it?
No, I agree with what you're saying 100%, and I'd be fine saying, all right, here's what we're going to do, y'all. We need full-time officials. The SEC needs full.
I think it's stupid that we don't even have that right now.
I think it's just, I mean, that's downtown dumb. We need full-time officials that during the off season they go and referee other things, or they referee simulated games or something, so that they can get better at this. Because again, I go back to it. I know we all have things we can pick out, but this, for instance, is what really bothered me in the Iron Bowl when KLS knocked Devontae Smith into the bench, and I was like, oh, I don't mind throwing a flag on both of them. I don't mind that at all. I don't mind throwing two flags and offsetting. They called two penalties in Alabama and none on Auburn, and I know the game won and whatever. I'm just saying that is an indication to me that these people don't know what they're doing, because what you did was create more of a problem than what you had before this. Because if you call offsetting penalties, I think both teams go, okay, we got to take a step back. You penalize one team, which I think was incredibly justified to penalize, and not penalize another, which also would have been justified. And you create animosity and you create a setup for more unsportsmanlike play. And I just think that when you don't have enough sense to do something like that, you don't have enough sense to call this game. I just believe that you're making enough money now where you've got to do better than that. If you miss a hold, if you miss a pass interference that are judgment calls, I think in the end we all got to get over that. But when you miss unsportsmanlike stuff, that's when you don't have the ability to call this game. I don't have the ability to be a brain surgeon. So, I mean, I shouldn't be doing it. And if you saw me over there doing it with a steak knife and a fork, you'd get, hey, Luke, get out of here. And that's what it's like.
Well, I just think at the end of the day, we hammer there's a couple of reasons why we're in the situation we're in, and we'll get to break here. We'll go ahead and go to break. But we come back, I want to keep talking about this. We talk about all these big time players and, NIL and playoffs and, national championships and all this. And we pay our officials $2.22. It's just really the dumbest crap. And they have the biggest impact on the outcomes of games than anybody. It ain't a fan. It ain't a coach. It's a call on the field that a lot of times determines whether a team wins or loses. And you're paying that guy to come over on Saturday after he's worked as a vending machine repairman all week. I mean, I'm not cut. That's not a cut at somebody that repairs vending machines. Probably make way more than me. But that's what you expect, is for him to get on a plane and go to College Station and referee a game between Texas and Texas A&M.
I wondered why in the Iron Bowl that one guy, He didn't throw a flag. He threw a pack of Lance cheese crackers.
It was close to the same color. All right, let's get to break. Stay tuned. More to come right after this.
Justin says, when I watch the NFL, I hardly ever see horrendous calls like I see in every
Well, they
SEC.
get paid. They get paid.
First of all, they do get paid more. But secondly, I love this from the NFL. I didn't think I was going to like this. I do love it. They have this replay assistance where if something is so incredibly dumb, and again, I shouldn't use the term dumb because when you're on the field, you don't have the vantage point of everybody else. So when they see something or they thought they saw something and it's not correct, replay assistant kicks in like this. And if it's really off, they'll say, hey, y'all missed that. And they'll go, I mean, they fix it within 15 seconds. It's bananas. It's a wonderful system. Now, there are other times where it's a little more difficult, and replay assistants like, we need more time. And if they want to challenge it, let them challenge it. And so then they can challenge it. Why college insists on replaying everything all the time and still not getting it right is beyond me.
Hey, when did we get to the point where officials just take a glance over at the chains and say, I'll just move the chains. Let's go. Nobody measures anymore for nothing. I mean, they just why don't we even have the daggum chains anymore?
We should. It is sort of it's sort of antiquated that we can't do something a little more exact. Right.
Chad, yeah, well, we got, we're out there and we bring, but nobody brings the chains out anymore. They're pretty much, they pretty much eliminate. Chad said collegiate refs should accept money to put logos on the uniform. Hey, Lance, crackers, Cheez-Its.
I'd love to be a referee and be sponsored by Coates Optical. I can't see nothing, and I'm going to prove it.
At the Alabama game last week, Auburn-Alabama game, I heard that when the referees got out of the van to go in the stadium, there's somebody across the street playing Three Blind Mice on a loudspeaker. You could hear it pretty well. It's pretty funny.
It's funny, but I also do hate it because I understand it's a loveless job.
Look,
but you do not help yourself when you do calls like that. When you do things like that, people are like, yeah, you are stupid. I'm sorry.
Look, I'm going to tell you this. I mean, you put yourself in you know what you're doing. If you have the love for want to be an official and want to stay involved in sports, and that's your way of giving back, I think it's awesome. And you know going in that you're probably going to get hammered. You're going to miss a call time to time. You're not perfect, and you accept that. You go, look, I can't wear my feelings on my sleeves and all that. And I've had stories. Pete Story was telling me last night some things about a coach respecting him more when he just flat out said, Coach, I missed that call one time. And he said the guy, me and him had a great relationship ever since then. It wasn't like I tried to cover up that I'm some perfect, official. I just admitted I was wrong. I missed that call, but I'll do everything I can not to miss it again. And
you can't do makeup call. That's the thing. People are like, that's a makeup call. See, you can't do that either. Two wrongs don't make a right.
No, here we go. About 3 seconds. Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air, talking about officiating and NIL and recruiting and all that kind of stuff. Technology. I mean, Glenn said something about AI officials coming into play soon. He said, don't get rid of my chains, though. Justin said he agrees with you. Build it into the goal line too. Now we can track everything, golf balls, trajectory, and all. But why not football? I mean,
it is ironic that there's a Top Golf right across from Protective Stadium.
No doubt.
And every time I go over there, it's like, you are the worst golfer I've ever seen. I mean, they can tell me where. Now, it doesn't do it like a robot, but it would be kind of cool. But it can tell me how far I hit it, how I shanked it. It can tell me exactly where that ball is, when they pick it up. It tells you everything.
Robots don't even have to sound like robots anymore with AI. You don't even that's even gone out. There's like the robots going, I don't talk like that. I don't sound like that. I sound like you. So, but anyway, you're right. All the technology, and then we still do stuff like this. But I want to go back and finish our discussion about officiating because I think it's important because all of us, every single person watching this show is guilty. Number one, sports.
Well, the reason he says that is because on Locked On Bama, for no reason whatsoever, FanDuel is one of our sponsors. And I have to do a live read and I always go, America's number one sports book. I have no idea why I do it, but I've been doing it and I can't stop. And
Please
stop. Every time I do it, and I keep telling people, I don't know why I'm saying that like a robot.
Luke's still the only person and robot in the world that sounds like a robot. So,
but it is the universal sound of robot. People understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
The robots have even they have.
I don't talk like that.
They have grown to pass their own talk and sound. They're like, we just don't sound like that anymore. But anyway, going back to officiating, it's a problem all the way around, and we've all been guilty. Everybody watching this show, listening, have berated and destroyed officials before. We're all in that boat. They're going to make mistakes, and they're going to have calls against our team, and then there's going to be calls for our team. But at the end of the day, Luke, I think you said something that was spot on going to break. Because your official missed a call, there shouldn't be a such thing as a makeup call. So you're going to intentionally screw another play because you screwed up one before that. So that's not – you're right. Two wrongs don't make a right there. But we have got to figure this thing out, and there needs to be a training program where you look – if you start in high school and you have some kind of program where you can work your way up into higher levels of officiating after so many years, and you've proven that you can do this, but make it lucrative. Look, if we're going to make all this about money for players and all this, then why not do the same for the officials who have a tremendous impact on the game? Period.
And I've always said this, Brett. I said it a million times on this show, that when officials do mess up, I think we as fans do need to be more careful with our words in terms of, like, if an official screws up what you think was a bad holding call, either way, either they should have called it and they didn't, or they didn't call it and they did call it, whatever, or a pass interference or whatever. I think we need to go, hey, look, we're up here in the stands and we see it a little more clearly. They're on the field level doing that, and we give them a little break. I've always said, if quarterbacks can throw interceptions, running backs can fumble, receivers can drop passes, defenders can miss tackles, an official can miss a call. But absolutely. I go back to what I'm saying. You can't miss things as fundamental as unsportsmanlike conduct that happens in front of everybody. You can't miss things like a false start that was clear as day. You can't miss those things. Now, there's some things that are judgment calls that we all have to accept, but you cannot miss things that that grossly penalize or favor one team over another when it's not a judgment call. It just is what it is.
The game has gotten faster, and in basketball too. Maybe one of the toughest sports to officiate is basketball, with the way it's up and down. There's no walk the ball up the floor and set up a half-court offense. Luke, it is as rapid as you can get, and these officials are having to run back and forth and catch, fouls and things, and it's just so much faster. So naturally, there's going to be more errors and more mistakes. So I mean, look, if you want the best performance, then you got to show that through compensation and make it worth somebody's time to put up with some of this stuff. Because again, the berating and the attacking, I mean, seeing on social media, Pete said last night on the show or on the broadcast, you got all these social media posts where officials are getting attacked literally after games, and people go, I'm not putting myself and my family through that. Even though I'd love to go do it, I'm not going to do it. Chad said words. Fans need to be careful with their water bottles. That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm saying. You watching on social media, people getting attacked because they missed a call and are waiting for them in the parking lot or something, and then they're like, you know what? I'm just not going to deal with this.
And I understand that. I do. I wholeheartedly understand it. It is sad that that's where we are, but that's not just limited to sports. I mean, you see road rage every single day. You see if somebody
everybody just mad as hell all the time about everything.
It's sad state of affairs, and sports is a microcosm and really a reflection of how society is in general.
All right, we're getting close to our next break. When we come back from break, let's talk about the recruiting, how that went this week. Big for Alabama and Auburn. Luke, I want your take on your players for Alabama. I think they are at number 2 on 24/7. The Texas jumped up to number 1, but Alabama with a really good recruiting class. But even Wesley Brett and I were talking last night. It just feels a little weird with the lack of Alabama players. Still got a great class. Obviously, you'll take the number 2 class every year. It doesn't matter if they come from Timbuktu. But I think you understand and know the importance of, maybe a few players from Alabama that you want to stay in state with. I think Auburn finished around 6 or 7, depending on where they landed. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the key recruits in these classes for both teams. So, all right, stay tuned. More to come on the Saturday Sports Countdown right after this. Who was the quarterback y'all got, Luke?
Keelan Russell?
Yeah, Keelan Russell.
That dude's a dude. He's a dude. I mean, he is a dude. I mean, I'm big Keelan Russell fan. I've watched him because when I do the scoreboard show, what I typically do, because I can't really go anywhere. I mean, I can go out to dinner, but I want to keep up with the games, right? So I go to the office and watch on NFHS other games, or I listen to you guys so I can know something. But sure. I always put his game on because it was always, and I think he plays the state championship today, but and he's got a very Lamar Jackson kind of wiry, strong, can run, but got a flick of the wrist thing. Like Landon Duckworth's got that too, where you just flick your wrist and it'll go 60 yards. It's kind of crazy because he doesn't look like he's that strong. But I like him a lot. So fired up about him. I like KJ Lacey too, but I think I take Keelan Russell all day, every day. So
yeah. No, and
I'm surprised. Weird that Texas, in the posture they're in, they come to Alabama to get KJ Lacey and Keelan Russell.
Yeah, but I think we need to start. I was going to start the last segment with Justice Terry.
Yeah.
I got to tell Russ, let me know when we got 30 seconds and I'll start my clock.
This is getting pretty close to my last segment because I got to take Sealy to that basketball game.
Okay.
Who said, like the former QB? What's he talking about?
Are you talking about Jalen Daniels?
Oh, yeah. He's got some Jalen Daniels, and that's a good call. He's got some Jalen Daniels. It wouldn't shock me at all if Keelan Russell ended up starting at Alabama next year. I like Ty Simpson. Jimmy loves him. Jimmy thinks he's going to be the starter. I do too, but it's not going to shock me. And let's make sure Ty Simpson's still on the team first. You don't know who's going to be on this team.
Yep, that's the problem. That's what you're dealing with. And Auburn fans, obviously, we feel real good about getting Deuce Knight, another top quarterback in the country.
He's a freak athletically. He probably needs some training.
But he's got an easy release too. The ball just jumps out of his hand as well. He's probably, several recruiting services said he may have the best arm in the whole class. So he's, again, I think needs to be a little bit more developed, but I think he's going to be a big time player. You got to get one in each class. I think you got to have a quarterback, and of course Auburn's going to go get. Auburn's going to go get a portal quarterback too.
Justin Clayton says, I like Ty Simpson over Austin Mack. I mean, I do personally. That doesn't mean that the coaches do. I mean, the coaches obviously brought Austin Mack over, and they had no problem letting Julian Sayin, the number 1 quarterback in last year's class, transfer out. I mean, they didn't really even attempt to keep him. So they obviously love him, and he's interesting. And Alabama just signed Derek Meadows, who's a 6'6" wide receiver. And I thought, that'd be interesting. A 6'8" wide receiver, quarterback throw into a 6'6" wide receiver is interesting.
Right.
But, you said you mean Keelan over Austin Mack. I like Keelan over Austin Mack. I like Keelan over any of them. I mean, especially long term.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. About 30 more minutes left in the show today. And Luke, talking about recruiting. I want to start before we go in. I know you got to get out after this segment. You got a Little League basketball game to get to. Yesterday, Justice Terry, it seemed like it was a Georgia-Auburn battle coming down the end. And then at 11 o'clock, he announced he signed with Texas. This is what we're talking about. I mean, it's clearly nothing to do with the schools anymore. It's whoever comes in with the last best deal on the table that makes that person a priority. And you know that Georgia wanted him. You know that Auburn wanted him. There's a boatload of schools that wanted him. But Auburn and Georgia had been the final two. And I think it was back and forth with them. And I think this decision stunned a lot of people. It stunned a lot of the recruitniks out there that do this for a living. And you're going to see more of this stuff where you have teams that just come in and say, no, I'm not going – we need you more than they do. And we know that you haven't been on us as much, but we're going to pay you and we're going to make you change your mind.
I talked to Jason Caldwell about this a little bit yesterday too, and I was surprised at his answer because I assumed he'd be really talking just like you are right now, but he made it sound like, nah, Texas was in this more than people thought. And they obviously probably put together the best NIL package. What we kept hearing down the stretch here in our area was that Auburn's NIL package was better, but he kind of wants to go to Georgia, but it comes down to what he wants to do. And it's obviously he's an in-state Georgia kid. He grew up a Georgia fan. So, yada, yada, yada. But then Texas comes in, apparently offers a good bit. Now, what they offer, I don't know. It's really probably none of my business. But it's interesting, and you do wonder.
I really want to start seeing some of these deals. I want to see what's going on.
Well,
because we heard some rumors about some other players going to other schools, getting some things that are just absurd.
Name offered in Oregon.
Right. I mean, that's one of them. Possibly a shoe deal. I mean, come on, man. And look, they can do whatever the heck they want to do. It's their organization. And Phil Knight's just flat buying everybody.
And he is.
I mean, that's just what we're down to now, Luke.
And I don't love it, but if I were one of the kids being recruited, I'd be like, why don't you wind your own business? And I'm trying to understand, but I'm also trying for everybody to understand that this college football has always been different. And people say, well, it's flawed here and it's flawed there. Yeah, but it's beautiful.
Hey, can you make it to the point where it's if we're going to have NIL, can you make it like the NFL where you have to disclose your contract?
I don't see why you couldn't, but I still go back to Nike, and just like the Cowboys or New York or Los Angeles, they've got these inherent advantages, or Miami. They've got inherent advantages that, like, if you're a quarterback going to Chicago, you're like, I can't set records up there. I'm not as big a deal up there. Y'all quarterbacks, it's cold weather. It's a problem. Or if how often does Green Bay or Jacksonville get the slam dunk free agent? It seems like they don't get them that often. Now they may pay a lot to keep a Jordan Love or an Aaron Rodgers around for a while, or a Brett Favre. But how often do they go get somebody that is like, this is the biggest free agent out there? And I think when you factor in marketability, remember when Shaq was at Orlando? I mean, this goes way back. When Shaq was at Orlando, and Orlando offered him the moon. And he was like, yeah, but whatever y'all offer me ain't what I can do if I'm at LA.
Right.
And LA is different. And so same thing. I mean, whatever Alabama or Auburn could do for Naheem Offord or Ohio State, y'all can't make me a shoe. Not the guy who owns the whole company is going to do a shoe with me, he says. Now, what happens, we'll know. We'll see later. But what I'm saying is, how does that change? And then Justin says, you can't tell me this won't divide a locker room. And this is where, again, I'm not saying Alabama's doing it right, because I don't think anybody knows what's right yet. I do know this, that there's a kid named Ty Haywood who apparently he's been committed to Alabama for a long time, flipped from Oklahoma to Alabama. Alabama had a very nice, very competitive NIL package for him. And now Michigan has come in last second, and they've offered the moon and the stars and everything else for Bryce Underwood, who left Michigan. They offered it to, I think, Nate Marshall. I think they gave Nate Marshall, who was at Auburn, a much more lucrative package. They flipped him back, and they're probably going to with this kid because they've targeted him, and they said we're willing to overpay because they're desperate. Do I think that will divide the locker room ultimately? Yes, but Michigan's like, we'll deal with that part later. Right now, we don't have the talent to compete. I also think that's kind of what Hugh Freeze did when he first got there. He's like, I got to up my game a little bit. I might have to overspend on the front end so that later we can come back down. The problem is, will it come back down? You think about Naheem Alford. If I'm Naheem Alford and I'm like, or say you're another defensive back next year for Oregon, and you're highly rated, and you go, I know you did this for Naheem Alford. I want that plus inflation. And they go, well, we can't do that anymore. We gave him that deal. Yeah. Well, if you don't do that, you don't get me. And see, you set the market at this other standard. And so in a way, Alabama has said, okay, Ty Haywood, this is what our offer is. And this, we don't want to get over that because, yeah, maybe Alabama spent more for Ryan Williams. I mean, I've heard that too. Maybe they did. He's generational. Ty Haywood is an incredible offensive lineman. I love him. I'd love him to be in this class. But do I want him to get paid more than a Michael Carroll who's also in this class? No, I don't. I think they should be on the same page. Now, ultimately, as things progress in their careers, maybe he'll make more. But right now, I don't want to do that because if you get in the habit of overpaying, you're going to have to continue to overpay. That's what I think. Now, ultimately, I may be wrong, but I believe that.
Again, it goes back to what we said at the beginning of the show. I mean, this thing's only going to get worse, Luke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only going – if anybody thinks this thing's going to level out, it's not. Everybody's going to think the next year that they're better than the guy the year before that got X number of dollars. Well, if that was the top player in the country last year and I'm the top player this year and I can do this, well, then I expect this. And we heard from day one about what Naheem Alford was potentially asking for in his camp. And we said, I mean, he was asking for quarterback money. And this is the unofficial, I guess, hierarchy of NIL deals where you go quarterbacks and then running backs, receivers, and then so forth and so on. And here's a defensive back asking for what a quarterback. And they're like, you know what? We're going to do it. We're going to get it if we go over here versus here. And it's not going to get any better.
It's funny. I mean, like, and this guy who's asking for quarterback money apparently got beat for touchdowns 2 times in the state championship game. Doesn't mean he's not awesome. Naheem Alford's a superstar. I love him. I would love him to be at the University of Alabama. At the same time, I think it doesn't mean he's never going to get beaten.
Right. He's not perfect, for sure. So, all right, let's get to break. Luke, is that going to wrap you up today?
I got to go. I'm sorry, brother. I got to run.
All right, man. Well, I'll limp to the finish line here with my voice. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. Have a good weekend, Luke. Stay tuned. More of the Saturday Sports Countdown right after this. All right, guys, I'll run down some recruits for Auburn here coming up on the last couple segments. Talk about the top classes in the country. Obviously, Texas, Oregon. I think 95% of their entire class is blue chips, and it's crazy. It's wild to see kind of where this has gone and how this is playing out. But it's the world we live in now, man. You can either like it or not watch it. And I'm kind of in the camp of just like everybody else. I don't want to watch it sometimes because it doesn't seem like it matters to the kids as much anymore. And this is coming from former players on both Auburn and Alabama that they look at it and you can say, well, they're just sour because they didn't get these kind of deals when they were coming through. And maybe so. That may have something to do with it, but there's going to have to be some regulation. And look, I'm not saying it's Congress. I'm not saying it's I don't know who the right governing, but you'd like for the NCAA to actually be in some type of power where they could do it. But they've been rendered useless. And really the court systems have rendered them useless, saying that they don't have the ability to make some of the decisions and calls that they've been making. So I don't know what the daggum answer is. Do you form a committee to regulate it? I think you need to figure something out there, but something has to happen. Or this thing's going to continue to go down this road and it's only going to get worse. All right, John said, as the price escalates for NFL players, the NIL money will also continue to escalate. I mean, it comes downhill, John. You're right. I mean, it goes. What you see in the NFL ultimately trickles down into college, and what you see in college ultimately trickles down into the high school ranks, and that's what we're seeing in high school right now. I mean, we're hearing high school NIL deals and kids moving around, and I mean, I'm not going to call out any particular high schools, but we know of several here in the state that had massive influxes of transfers. And you can use your own imagination. I'm not going to start anything or point a finger at anybody, but it's not my job to regulate this and to enforce rules. So all I know is all of us as media and fans just want to see a little bit of integrity restored to the sport and not just all about the dollar. I'm not saying that I'm not for players making money. That's not what we're saying. We're all for that. Welcome back, everyone, to the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. A couple segments left in the show today. Again, I'm going to go solo for the last two segments here. Luke had to step away. And again, I want to thank all of you for joining us. I want to thank JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air for being our partners here on the program for so long. Looking at the top classes in the country, Luke and I said this at the beginning of the show. It's not a secret where the money's going. The SEC and the Big Ten, but mainly the SEC. If you look at the top 10, it is heavily laden with SEC schools. Texas is number 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3. Then you got Oregon in there at number 4. It's hard to believe with the amount of money that Phil Knight has spent that they're not a little bit higher than that, but 21 commitments have them at number 4, Ohio State 5. Then you had Auburn at 6, and I'm going to come back and say something about Auburn here in just a second. Texas A&M or LSU 7, Texas A&M 8, Michigan 9, and Tennessee 10, followed up by Florida on the outside at number 11. Guys, I mean, let's be honest about it. The SEC and the Big Ten dominated the top 10, and it's mainly the SEC. So I'm going to go back for all the Auburn fans that are tuning in and talk about them for just a second. If Auburn has a few more wins on the field, you know, Auburn was at number 5 and as high as number 3 several weeks ago going into signing day. And the win over Texas A&M kind of bolstered them a little bit, and then they come back and have a poor performance in the Iron Bowl offensively. And you saw, again, NIL have a factor in a couple teams coming in and taking a few players, but Auburn did the same. Auburn was able to come in and take a few players. That's the give and take. That's going to happen on signing days. But I really think Auburn dropped a few spots because of the play on the field this year. If Auburn wins 7, 8 games, I think Auburn finishes in the top 5 easily. Now you're saying, well, it's only one spot. They're at 6. And I get that. But when you start looking at the average star rankings, especially in the top 10 and then on up into the top 5, these points make a big difference, especially in the caliber of recruit that you have. So instead of finishing 3 to 5, Auburn finished 5 to 7 because of the play on the field. And we talked about it. If they would have just done what they needed to do on the field, there wouldn't have been as much drama involved in coming down the stretch with this recruiting class. So Ohio State ends up jumping back ahead of Auburn on 24-7. They finished 5th. We're all going to have to put up with the Oregons and the SMUs of the world. You know, you're saying SMU, but SMU's a playoff team now. They've got as much money as anybody in the country. And Rhett Lashley's done a really good job with that team. and you got Phil Knight at Nike that pretty much has an unlimited checkbook, and he's giving Dan Lanning the opportunity to go out and pluck the best players out of whatever state he wants to go pluck them from, a la Alabama here with Naeem Alford. I mean, Auburn felt really good about it. Naeem Alford was committed to Ohio State pretty much the entire recruiting cycle. And then on signing day, he signs with Oregon. You saw Justice Terry yesterday, big-time in-state defensive lineman from Georgia that everybody felt like it was between Georgia and Auburn, ends up signing with Texas. You're going to have that. If you're highly sought after, you have the leverage, and it really becomes a bidding war. It becomes a situation where somebody can swoop in at the last minute and throw a deal on the table, kind of like sitting at the poker table. You think you got the hand won, and then the guy throws down the perfect card he's been holding, and he knocks you off. And I think that's what we're looking at now. Steve Sarkisian did another really good job with Texas. They're not going anywhere. The SEC is brutal. We talk about that all the time. You could finish like Auburn, 6th in the country, and you got 3 teams ahead of you in the recruiting rankings. And then right behind you, you got 3 more SEC teams knocking on the door. So, I mean, you could be in the top 10 in the country in recruiting and be 6th in the conference or 7th in the conference. And that's really no different than what it's been the last several years. But, man, you add Oklahoma and you add Texas into the mix now, it just makes it even tougher. So, looking at Auburn, we do the Auburn Blitz podcast every morning. Let me just kind of go through some of these players for Auburn and some of the ones I think are going to have immediate impacts. One is the one we saw last night in the Parker game. Jordan Crawford is one of the best defensive linemen I've ever seen in high school. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Auburn homer, and I'm not saying that because he's going to Auburn. Anybody with eyes that can see, I don't care who you pull for, cannot argue that Jordan Crawford's performance in that championship game and pretty much all year is unbelievable. A kid that's 6'2", 300 pounds that can move the way he moves. He's a 4-star. I don't know how he's not a 5-star. He could have an immediate impact on the team next year. I would actually be shocked if he's not in the starting rotation next year for Auburn as a freshman on that defensive line. And this is a defense for Auburn that has a chance to be even better than the one they put on the field this year. And this was a top 15 defense. But you add Jordan Crawford and you add Malik Autry and you add Jared Smith to this mix. I mean, Auburn really racked up on the defensive line. And this happens to be one of the best defensive back classes that Auburn's ever signed. And it starts with Anquan Fagans and Eric Winters, 2 of the best safeties, obviously in the state, but 2 of the best safeties in the country. The 4 and 5 player in the state of Alabama, Anquan Fagans at Thompson and Eric Winters at Enterprise. I mean, you're looking at 2 guys that I think can come in and also have immediate impacts there for Auburn on the defensive side of the football. Antonio Coleman, not that I wasn't impressed with him with Saraland, a little bit undersized playing the nose tackle position last night for Saraland at 270, 275 pounds, but he is a highly ranked 4-star player that you can see has all the tools. I definitely think he can come in and get stronger and get a little bit bigger and also be a player that can contribute on the defensive line for Auburn. So I thought Auburn really did a good job this week with the defensive recruits that they signed. On the offensive side of the football, it starts with Deuce Knight from Mississippi. That was the quarterback that Auburn went all in on after they couldn't really get on the same page with Juju Lewis. They go into Mississippi and they grab Deuce Knight. They got him to flip from North Carolina several months ago. And then, again, the play on the field had some Auburn fans worried that they might lose him. to Ole Miss. Ole Miss really recruited him hard, made a push for him. They were able to hold on to him, and it really wasn't a lot of drama there on signing day. He was all in on Auburn. I think he can't wait to get there. He'll be an early enrollee for Auburn, and that will help him go ahead and get a spring under his belt. And then we'll see what Auburn's able to do in the portal. Go out and see who they're able to sign. But Auburn is definitely going to go in the portal and get a big-time quarterback, and they need to. I think that's where they made their biggest mistake this year. Not just pounding Peyton Thorne, but quarterback play was not where it needed to be to compete in this league. And I think Hugh Freeze made that mistake, and he can't afford to make it again this year. So you got to go out and get the best possible portal quarterback that you think you can get that fits your system. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our final break on the show. Stay tuned. One final segment right after this. All right, guys, one segment left here on the program. And again, I thought Auburn did fine. I thought Auburn finished, with a really good class. Could it have been better? Yeah, it could have. Auburn lost a couple of key guys that I thought knocked them out of the top 5. I think Auburn really felt like they were in on Naeem Alford, and I just think again the bid won out for Oregon on Naeem Alford. I really think he loved Auburn. He made several trips there, but at the end of the day, this is what we're all going to have to deal with. Alabama lost some players. Georgia lost some players. It's not about really what you're doing on the field as much anymore as what type of deal am I going to get and who's going to give it to me. Just because you spend the most money doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win a national championship either. And we'll see what happens with Oregon this year. They've been the number one team pretty much through this whole process, but they got to navigate the playoffs, and we'll see if they're able to win it. But they're buying players, and they're trying to stockpile the best roster. And I think Dan Lanning's a good coach. But as Luke said in the NFL, I mean, the Cowboys and those type teams, they have the popularity, they have the built-in advantages, and they can't win squat. And it's because Jerry Jones screws everything up. And I think the sooner that Jerry Jones gets out of the way, the better they're going to be. But again, if you have inherent advantages and you're able to spend the money and you're able to get the best roster, then it becomes how you manage the roster. And can you keep the locker room from being divided? I know Justin said something about the shoe deal possibly with Naeem Alford. Would that divide the locker room? Well, I mean, did they offer a shoe deal to everybody? Did they offer a shoe deal to every single recruit they had? I mean, I don't know. And here's another thing, and I hate this. And this, they've got a good program, obviously, and they've had a good program for a while, Oregon. But the geography of where they are, even though they've got Nike, does that ultimately end up hurting them in some of these situations? Because kids travel out there and they say, they end up wanting to come back home or whatever. So I don't know what it all plays out. I think everybody just speculates all the way around, but recruits are the way to win. You got to build rosters, and you got to have the players. You got to have good coaching, but you definitely have to have good players. If you don't have the players, to me, it doesn't matter what kind of coach you have. Johnson, who do you think Auburn will target in the portal? It looks like Jackson Arnold may be one of the top guys from Oklahoma when he gets in the portal. I love the kid from Washington State, but I'm hearing that Oklahoma really kind of has a beat on him. Maybe a package deal for him and his offensive coordinator to come to Oklahoma. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the final segment here on the Saturday Sports Countdown presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Heating and Air. John said, let's see how many of these big NIL players stay where they go initially. Something's to be said for home fires and mama's cooking. Hey, let me say this, John. I know you're a big Alabama fan. Alabama's had a great recruiting class, and talked about this with Luke. and Luke has made the argument about, the way recruiting's done now. But look, I think what you said is what we've all been talking about at the end of the day. That has a lot to do with players staying where they are. And in this day and age of the transfer portal, I'm probably trying to get as many great players as close to home as I can get. Now, Alabama has the number 2 recruiting class, but they got a boatload of players that are not in the state of Alabama, and they got a bunch from out west. And so how does that ultimately play out? Do they have a massive exodus in the portal next year? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm going to take my chances with a bunch of guys from Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee and Louisiana rather than Utah, California, Ohio, Michigan. I'm not saying those aren't good players and you don't want them. If they're the best players in the country and you can get them, more power to you. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see this have a bigger play. And, again, I think it's a little bit naive to think. I've had multiple Alabama fans and multiple former players at Alabama that I've talked to that say it's a little concerning to them that they didn't get a single player in the top 10 in the state of Alabama in this class. And if you're an Alabama fan and you say, well, it wasn't that big a deal, there's several of the top 10 players you would have taken, and you know it. Naeem Alford being one of them. Luke just said that. Now, he ends up going to Oregon. But, again, to not get a single player in the top 10 in the state of Alabama, that's unheard of for Alabama. I mean, you got to get a few players from your state. It's not like this was a down year. This was a good class in the state of Alabama. Next year is a very good class in the state of Alabama. I think you have to get your fair share every year, and then you go build from wherever. But, again, we'll see. Right now, Alabama's at number 2, so it's hard to argue with it. But I think you won't know the results until next year or maybe even the year after of how that all plays out. Chad said, are any of these teams requiring contracts to stay a certain number of years, et cetera, to get NIL deals? Chad's a good question. That's the thing about all this NIL stuff is we don't know. I think it varies from program to program and locking kids in. How many of these contracts are multi-year deals? I'm going to throw a hypothetical out there. The kid signs a $2 million deal. Is that $500,000 a year for 4 years? Is that $2 million a year? Is it, do you have to do something guaranteed? Technically, I don't think the schools can sign a kid to a contract right now. The letter of intent's all you can sign, and I don't think, even that's morphed and changed at this point. So, again, I think there has to be some regulation. There has to be some commonality. I'm all for if they're signing these contracts, they're signing these deals, making that public knowledge. What are these kids getting? What did Justice Terry get to go to Texas yesterday? And you may say, well, it's none of your business. Well, yeah, it is. Because if you're going to play, these contracts in the NFL are disclosed. So if we're going to do that, let's quit. We wanted to eliminate hiding in the shadows and under the table deals. And now we're going to openly pay players. Well, let's just tell everybody what it is so we can all talk about it out there and we can go, that was stupid. If Oregon said, I would like to know if they paid Naeem Alford X number of dollars and gave him a shoe deal worth a certain amount of money. That way other teams can use ammo against Oregon. Or Oregon can use ammo against them. I'm not just trying to isolate them, but I think that's a big deal. I think you need to know that because teams negatively recruit all the time anyway. They go out and tell you that coach's not going to be there next year, or he's got health problems and he's probably not going to coach much longer. You don't want to go to that program. So I think there's a lot of that needs to be reined in, and we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for the Saturday Sports Countdown. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Again, I apologize for the raspiness of my voice today. It's been a long 3 days up in Birmingham with the Super Sevens. Had some great games, but we will catch you guys next week for more Sports Blitz programming. Again, I want to thank JR's Sports Bar and Grill and Sunshine Eating and Air for all they do for our programming. Have a great weekend, everybody.